You're listening to Barbell Logic, brought to you by Barbell Logic Online Coaching, where each week we take a systematic walk through strength training and the refining power of voluntary hardship.
Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm the sidekick here, and the main kick is Matt Reynolds, a former pro strongman. Is that like being a Marine? Like once you're a pro strongman, are you always a pro strongman?
No, maybe.
Or like an Eagle Scout, you're
Let's
always
hope so.
Okay.
I like to think that I'm in the fraternity.
Okay, pro strongman Matt Reynolds, and then I'm Scott Hambrick.
We are going to talk today about training mindset. The way the question was posed is to hype or not to hype.
Right.
For training mindset, and just talk about what that looks like for us and what we like. Boy, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff over the years. I'll tell my story here in a little bit, but what does it look like for you? How often do you get hyped up? How often do you just try to do the thing that you're required to do without getting hyped up?
Right.
And then when you get hyped up, what does that look like for you?
Well, I'm so bad at holding the form together in most of these lifts that I can't be hyped up. Like I've got to be calm and do my work in a very conscientious way. You know, if I get too hyped up, and Charity's like this on the press, if she gets too hyped up, and she's a strong presser, but if she gets too hyped up, that bar is going to go forward. She has to be really cool and really think about what she needs to do. And so, you know, I don't know if somebody, karate chopping your brainstem, helps you focus, I guess then that would be good. But for me, like particularly on the squat, I've got to be going through my mental checklist of everything I've got to get right to get a successful one. I'm a decent deadlifter.
Yeah.
So, I can wedge myself under the bar. I've thought about this quite a bit because I'm a thoughtful person.
Sure.
And
you're a thinker.
I'll grab that bar, take the slack out of it and kind of, jam myself under it as best as I can. And then often I'll have a little key, a little yell kind of thing. Man, I think what that actually does, it helps. I think what it actually does is it just lets a little air out of my lungs.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that's it? Do you think there's any sort of adrenaline rush or?
Maybe. I think it's just like, okay, we're starting now.
Right.
And then, when I get tired, I'm prone to just take in too much air, letting a little of that out, lets me get my back flatter, in fact, and then, push the floor away. I'll use a little nose torque every now and then.
Yeah.
Seems to be useful.
Yep.
Nose torque doesn't rattle me that much.
What is, for those of our listeners who don't know what nose torque is?
It is a salt of ammonia. It's smelling salts, right? And it comes in a little white pill bottle, and it's got some cotton in there. And you just crack that thing.
Pure ammonia.
And then, when you were in chemistry lab in high school and they told you to don't put your nose over something and huff it, you don't huff this. So you kind of waft it.
Yeah,
over.
waft it into your nose. If you've never done it before, most people have smelled ammonia, so they kind of have a general idea. It's actually more similar, in my opinion, to taking too big of a bite of wasabi or horseradish.
Right, yeah.
You're like, whoa, and your sinuses are on, just inflamed.
It burns the back of your eyeball.
Yeah, it's not like spicy Thai food.
Right.
It's more like wasabi or horseradish that just way too much. You're like, whoa, and you have to almost calm down your breathing a little bit. If you breathe in too much, it burns too hard. Yeah.
And that definitely will spike up the adrenaline. Man, I like the nose torque for a press or the squat. It's literally mind games.
It's probably all placebo for the most part. I'm a focused guy. I like to be really focused on lifts for the same reason. I'm always thinking about form, technique issues. There's always one or two things in every lift that I'm thinking about. Unless it's the bench press, then I'm thinking about don't tear your pec.
Right.
I'm not thinking about form. I'm just thinking about hold it together. And so I very rarely get loud before a lift. I don't want to get slapped. I don't want to get smacked. I don't want, even if those of you guys that have watched some of my PR type lifts on Instagram or whatever, you'll notice that I often play the same song. I play Bleeding Me by Metallica, and there's nothing special about that song. It's more of an OCD thing now than anything else. I don't want real loud, real intense. I play Bleeding Me by Metallica because it's familiar, not because it's loud and intense.
Right.
There's a familiarity to it. This is the PR song. This is what we do. Dude, I've played that song for 15 years.
Right.
As the PR song. It's just kind of what I do. And it's actually a little bit embarrassing to play the same song. I usually don't watch videos with the sound on because I get tired of hearing music and stuff anyway.
But the music's horrible on these videos.
But if somebody is pulling a PR or squatting a PR or something, I'll often full screen the thing and turn it up if it's a real PR, especially with a client that I've trained for a while. And it's the same thing. They always play the same song.
Right. Brett's the Killers.
Yeah, it's pretty common. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, I got soul, but I'm not a soldier. That's when McKay plays a lot. He's gotten away a little bit the last few months from it. But so I like a lot of focus. I definitely have some real OCD tendencies and really did. Have I talked about this on the show ever? I don't know if I
Your
have.
obsessive compulsive disorder?
Do you know this? Have we talked about this?
Well, you carry baby wipes with you everywhere you go.
No, it's not that. I mean, yeah, it's not a cleanliness thing, although I'm certainly very clean and hygienic for sure. But I don't like obsessively wash my hand. My hands aren't red from washing them and whatnot. Yeah, I've got some OCD tendencies for real. Like when I was a little kid, I would certainly do the thing like where I really struggled to step on a crack on concrete. Well, that's a minor thing. Lots of kids do it. But a much more OCD thing is if I crossed my leg and I put like my right foot up on my left knee and it felt wrong, I would have to put it down, put it up, put it down, put it up, put it down, put it up, put it up, like over and over and over again, 6 or 7 times. So finally it felt right. And then I had to do the same thing with my left foot the same number of times.
Well, of course.
That's pretty OCD.
That's pretty weird.
And so the way that has carried over in lifting, I actually used to be a lot worse. Like I used to have a specific barbell. A barbell had to be turned a specific way. Everything had to feel exactly right. I remember when I used to do board presses, which I haven't done in years, when I was a powerlifter, where they do those to kind of do partial bench presses, things like slingshots or floor press or something that may be used today. We would put a 2x6 or a couple 2x6s on your chest. And the feeling of the 2x6 sitting down on my chest or being set on my chest would always be wrong. And so I'd have to pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down over and over and over again until it felt right. Okay, now it's right, and lift. I'm not as bad today, although the focus tends to be more like I'll grab the bar. If you've ever watched me on the press, I'll grab the bar, arms at full extension horizontally, and I'll rock in on the bar and rock out and rock in and rock out and rock in and rock in. I'll do that 5 or 6 times and then rock in and stand up tall. There's a timing, cadence, feel thing to it. I know it's weird.
Man, that's all right.
Squats the same way. I do kind of the same thing. I've got kind of a rock in and out on the barbell with a squat. And then the stance, the step back on a squat can really screw me if I'm not.
Well, I mean, all that other stuff you're talking about, that's crazy people stuff.
Yeah.
No, no. But if it's heavy, you've got to walk it out a particular way or you're going to have trouble.
Yeah. And so for me, I want to be able to walk it out. It's pretty rare that I can take 2 exact steps. So I stand up, I take a step back with my left foot, step back with my right foot. And at that point, I need to be 99% perfect.
Oh, so you do it all wrong. Why haven't you asked me about this?
Well, how do you do it?
Well, you have to walk it out. You take the first step with the same foot every single time.
Which I do with the left foot no matter what.
Well, that's wrong. It has to be the right.
But I'm left-handed.
No. Oh, I see. No, you take a half step with that first foot.
Yep.
Then you take a whole step with the other foot.
And then a half step.
Then another half step.
Yep.
And you can screw your feet in. And then you're done.
Right. Right.
No more. No more.
Right.
No more wiggling. I know you're not a big wiggler, but
I'm not a big wiggler, but I've seen clients that do it and you'll see them and they get worse and worse and worse.
yeah.
You guys that watch golf, you remember Sergio Garcia used to do this. He got to this thing where he would open his hands on the club and then close his hands and open his hands and close his hands and open his hands and close his hands. He would do that sometimes like 40 times before he'd stop and swing. Like while he's standing over the golf ball, he would do that. And that's a bad OCD tendency.
Yeah, if it's heavy, taking 2 full steps to get it out, it's really pretty tough. And, you'll hit the rack with the plates and rattle the rack and you get rattled. And
Yep.
No, I like that half step. Just started off with a half step. And by the way, a full step with the bar on your back ain't one like you're walking to the mailbox. Like they're all going to be littler steps anyway.
Yes, they are, for sure. I like ammonia. I have transitioned over from true smelling salts to ammonia caps.
Oh, yeah.
Which are not as intense.
Right.
And don't wear out as fast. So the pill bottle of ammonia salt, you've got probably 30 or 40 times you can open that bottle before it gets too weak to use. And I can get 100 ammonia caps on Amazon for like $20 for 100 caps. So it's maybe
it's about the same.
It's probably close, but it lasts forever. So, I mean, it lasts so long. Like, it's always good. I like breaking the cap and getting fresh ammonia. It's not quite as intense as the pure ammonia salt.
We'll put a link to those in the show notes. But even if you're not going to buy it, you need to go look at the Nose Torque bottle. It's like a handmade label.
Oh, yeah.
They like do it on a photocopier.
Did Ricky Del Crane make it?
Yeah, Ricky Del Crane.
He probably drew it.
In Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And it's got just a picture of a nose. It's awesome.
Yeah. Nose candy.
Yeah, the hype thing can be overdone for sure.
Definitely.
And, we were talking about the wiggling around after you squat. Man, in the dancing, when people in the bench press in particular, all that, dancing around with the feet and after they get the bar out of the rack is is a problem. But
Yep.
when it's heavy in our hands or it's heavy on our back, we're anxious and we have to
Sure.
really contain ourselves, or we'll develop those ticks.
Well, and you'll see the same thing with people on deadlift, right? When it's really bad on deadlift, because you're starting from a dead stop, and so you're trying to use a little bit of a stretch reflex down there when there isn't really anything to stretch necessarily, right? So you kind of go down, you tighten up the hamstrings, you take a deep breath, you squeeze your chest up, and you pull. And you'll see some people, they go down there and they sit down in the bottom of their deadlift and they wiggle, move the bar forward, roll the bar back, move it. It's just can become a real problem. So my general default is to first really never get overly hyped unless I'm going for a PR. Right. So if I'm just doing standard work, we don't use ammonia. We just do the work. I opt for real focus. I try to take the bar out of the rack with authority every time. That's a big deal to me because I want it to feel as light as I can. Again, it's sort of a placebo. If it feels like coming out of the rack, I'm more confident that I'm going to press it or squat it or bench it. And then when it comes time to use ammonia, I also use ammonia more for focus and less for hype. So I, like you said, I kind of waft the thing on my nose.
Yep.
It's a bronchodilator. It lets you get a little more oxygen into your lungs, take a nice deep breath. It's definitely also sort of like I don't know if it's an actual adrenaline release, but it feels like somebody
sure seems like it.
Bitch slaps you in the face without actually bitch slapping you in the face. Take a nice deep breath, but I still take a minute. I don't let it hit me and then go, "Rah!" And then take the weight out. I take the breath, sort of let it, what it does is it sort of gives me tunnel vision. When I take a breath of ammonia, I can see all this stuff in my peripheral and it kind of centers me on the barbell.
If you take too big of a breath of that nose tort, it puts you down.
It's opposite. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It'll drop you. And that's what I do. And then I know, I've gone back and watched, if I'm really loud and I'm pulling the old Ronnie Coleman lightweight baby, yelling stuff at myself and things like that. When I take the bar out of the rack, I know it already feels heavy and I'm trying to convince myself otherwise. And I usually miss the lift or it usually doesn't go well. If I take the weight out and it feels great, I get this little, I can see it. Other people probably can't see it. I can see in my face, there's almost like a little smile that occurs.
A little twinkle.
A little twinkle in my eye that's like, I know I'm about to crush this.
Right. Interesting. How many have you taken out of any lift and you're like, well, it's heavy, and then you actually got it?
Pretty rare.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare. Sometimes a squat will go that way because it feels so heavy on my back. A press, I pressed 285 the other day as my last warm up, and it was pretty heavy. And I actually wasn't real confident that 285 was going to go. And I took it out of the rack. I wasn't real confident. I took a hit of ammonia off the caps and took it out of the rack, and I instantly knew it was going up.
Yeah.
I could just tell. It came out right. It sat in my hands right. Sometimes you take a real heavy press out, it pushes on that nerve on your hand and it hurts. You're like, whoa, this is going to be bad. And I just took it out. Everything felt great. And I didn't have to get overhyped. Didn't have to make any noise. I just did it. It actually was pretty slow at the top. It was a pretty good grinder, but I still knew from the bottom it was going to go.
Let's talk about music.
Okay.
So you've got your effed out Metallica song.
Yep. That's the PR song.
Yeah. Charity, when she's at meets, she just listens to Van Halen Mean Streets on a loop, like for
over and
like
again.
8 hours.
Weird.
Yeah. I've got a young man that comes and trains at our house with us. His name's Jacob. And when it's PR time, it's the national anthem of the Soviet Union.
Really? That's cool. That's badass, actually.
It's a great.
I love that song.
It's great.
I know it from Rocky IV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where he got it.
Oh, I've got it memorized.
He's 16, and we turned that up for him. I've got a guy that comes, and he likes the Braveheart soundtrack.
Yep, right, that's good. The 300 soundtrack I like. The Returns of King is a good song.
Yep.
For that. Any song with bagpipes.
Bagpipes is great. Bagpipes and drums, great.
Yeah. There's some badass Irish Gaelic music. I hate Irish pub music, by the way. But you get like some real good sort of Irish Gaelic stuff is cool stuff there. When I train, when I'm just training and I'm going through my warm-ups and I'm just training, I really like just kind of basic rock stuff.
Right.
And I think we kind of default back to the music of our time, of our, like when college years sort of stuff a lot of times for me. So I default back kind of to 90s. I listen to Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. I will listen to Silverchair. It sucks, by the way. Like Silverchair sucks.
It's not my favorite.
90s music is terrible, but it sort of evokes this emotion in me that, it's what I listened to when I was 17 or 19 or whatever. And so, yeah, that old kind of Seattle Sound Exchange alternative grunge stuff is not high quality music, but I like it.
Some of it is.
I mean, I enjoy all of it, but I just recognize from a musical standpoint that I listen to Alice in Chains, and yeah, it's good. And Pearl Jam, I like Pearl Jam. I like Pearl Jam better than Nirvana. I listened to Nirvana actually more in high school. I like Pearl Jam better now. Metallica, Soundgarden, little Spoon Man,
Right.
little Outshine. Some of that stuff's good. I'll listen to that when I train, but I usually want something a little more familiar when it's time to hit the PR.
Right. Yeah. Another huge PR greatest hit is, any Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of that.
Yeah. Killing in the Name of.
Those things seem to make the weight move better.
Yeah.
I don't know what there is about it, but who was it? There's like some college football coach, Bryant, or one of these. It's like, when you get in the end zone, act like you've been there before. I kind of like that.
Bear Bryant.
I kind of like that idea. If you could just walk up to your deadlift, just get under it, get tight, and just push the floor away and stand up, then having an ass slap and like yelling, and then then a bump of Coke and whatever to get it up.
It's the untold Barbell Logic, the untold story.
Right.
Now, one of the most embarrassing lifting moments of my life is I was just become a professional strongman, and I was going to Pro Strongman Nationals in 2007. It was my first full year of teaching junior high school, and I was the head strength coach at the high school, and told the stories about the football coaches there. We all had all these coaches that could bench press over 400 pounds raw, and we had a really good atmosphere at the time. After school, we trained the kids from 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock to 4:30, something like that. And I had a 12 or 13-inch deadlift. Well, it was those big tires. You guys seen the strongman at the Arnold
right.
Strongman? They do the deadlift. It's a deadlift bar, and then they put these massive tires on it. Now, the tires are actually not that much bigger in diameter than a regular weight. So it ends up being like a 12 or 13-inch deadlift. And so I was doing, basically, it was a low rack pull is what it was. And so I pulled 800 from a low rack pull position for the first time. I mean, from just a couple inches off the ground, which is pretty damn heavy. And I got to the top, and the whole football team was watching me. And just like a complete turd, at the top of the deadlift, I held it, and I barked like a dog. I went,
right.
Well, for the rest of my coaching career, anytime anybody did anything, they would bark like a dog to make fun of me. And so, yeah, I learned my lesson. I never barked like a dog again until 10 seconds ago. And
stand there at lockout and then do an interview with the sports girl, Eddie Hall.
Yeah, that was actually pretty cool.
That's
when he did
super
that.
Cool.
He just sat there and answered questions, had her come over and ask him questions.
He pulled, was
with
it
1,005 or something? Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So even with the hype, the takeaway from this podcast is that even if you hype yourself up, when it's time to go, you still got to have focus on the form. Form is what I want. When I take a client or take clients to a meet, I'm always trying to give them the one cue that's important to think about. And if the form goes to crap, you're probably screwed.
Yep.
Right? You could theoretically have form go to crap and be super jacked up on a deadlift and pull a deadlift rounded back and not great. And it's it might go okay as long as the bar is on your legs, which is not coming off the ground unless it's on your legs. But boy, it just goes better when you give them something to think about, and that thing they have to think about is the one piece of form that really matters to them. And so I try to do the same thing in my own training. I think about the one thing.
Yeah, this reminds me of something you said earlier. You were talking about it had to be this bar and it had to be turned just this way in the rack. This isn't really about hype, but all of our listeners and all of our clients that train at home, it's really easy to get in a rut where, okay, I always squat in this rack facing this way with that bar, blah, blah, blah. And then when anything changes, man, you just can't do it.
That's right.
And so, beware of that. You got a squat rack, you can turn the hooks around and face the other direction.
You should, if you're going to do a meet. You got to have to face the open room.
Yep.
At an actual meet. You can't, if you're always used to facing the wall, you're in trouble when it comes to a meet.
It's much more difficult to maintain focus with that void out in front of you.
And a press may even be harder than a squat is there, because a squat, you at least have the focal point looking at the floor.
Right.
So when you get to the meet, I always remind my clients on the first rep, eyes on the floor. So they take the thing out. I say eyes, so set them so that they don't really focus on the crowd. But on a press, you're not looking at the floor.
Right.
And you're not looking at the ceiling. You're kind of looking straight out in front. And instead of the wall being 3 feet in front of you, the wall is 45 feet back and it's through a bunch of people's heads.
Right.
It's hard to find a thing to focus on.
When it's light, you should squat outside the rack when it's safe to do so, when it makes sense, and, and change it up when it makes sense.
Yep.
Well, there's a show about a weird topic.
Yeah. To hype or not to hype.
Well, what is the answer there? Hype or not to hype, Matt?
I don't think it matters. I think what matters is supreme focus. I think if you want to hype, it's fine. I'm not saying it doesn't matter to everybody. I think it matters to some, and the way you do it is fine. And find the thing that works for you. And I don't say that very often. Just find the thing that works for you. But what I know is that for everybody, they have to have extreme focus. And some people will focus better with some hype, and some people won't. I also think some of it has to do with personality. If you have somebody that's really high strung, who's sort of always overhyped, it's often better to calm them down a little bit. And if you have somebody that's just constantly just perpetually Winnie the Pooh, like they just smoke weed all day, they just naturally have that, then it's probably better to hype them up a little bit. So it depends on the person.
There's another show. Drop us a line, a question, a comment, let us know how we're doing. And go to the show notes here. You can find that link to a nose torque and the ammonia caps and maybe some plates, maybe some belts. Well, thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you in just a few days.